I'm Carl here from Competition Auto. Today we're going to be working on the 2020 Twin Turbo F150. The last time it was at the track, when Angela was driving it trying to stage it, she was having problems getting it to build any boost. So it would leave on 0 boost and then about 30 foot out and roll in kind of hard. So what we're going to be doing today is installing a 10R80 stager. That's a trans brake. Let's go over here and look at it. Okay, so this is the stager. Of course, wire harness, stager itself, a couple cool decals, and the instructions. Now I've already glanced through these instructions, and I noticed right away going through the instructions that this thing, all the instructions are based off of Mustang with the 10R80 in it. And of course we're working on the F150. So the first thing we're going to do is verify all the pinouts on a 10R80 Mustang is the same as F150. The other thing I noticed was it tells you what connector on the PCM to disconnect. It says the top. Okay, so let's take a look at the truck. Angela, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So on the instructions it says to go to the top connector on the PCM. Well, if you look here, there is no top. It's the F150. Computer's not vertical. So one of the things I noticed, a lot of people probably don't notice, is Angela, bring the camera. So we know we're doing the transmission line lock. So we've got each one of these, and rather than try to sit there and figure out which one the top is on the instructions, on all these newer Mustangs and F150s, get it off here. Get this one off first. If you look closely, this one will say vehicle. All these wires coming from the vehicle. This one's saying engine. And this one over here should say trans. Yes, this one right here says trans. So we're going to be working on the one for the trans. This one right here. Use them and not way too much for me to do. Okay, so you would normally be tapping into the harness in here. So we would untape it and get in there. But in this case, this is a twin turbo F150, and you can already see we have our downpipe right here. We have it wrapped, we have the harness wrapped. The less connectors we have around the heat source, the better. So what we're going to do is we're not going to go into any of these connectors. We're going to plug them back in. Apparently I can't remember which one plugs in first. Alright, they're all locked. So what we're going to do is we're going to chase these wires to the transmission, since we're doing everything in the transmission, and underneath the truck is where we're going to tap into the wires. Okay, so now we know we're not going to be tapping into any wires underneath the hood. We're going to tap into the wires underneath the truck by the transmission. The next step is, let's take these Mustang instructions and go online to our all data and see if all the pinouts are the same from a F150 to a Mustang. Angela, if you want to, you should be able to just go up to the big screen there. Let's see what we've got here. Second page. Andrew, can you zoom in on the paperwork real fast?
Okay.
Okay, so what we do have here is they have each wire they want us to cut, abbreviation, what they are, what colors they are, and to go up here what pinouts they are. So we're simply going to go to a Mustang, since this is for Mustangs, make sure pin 4 is going SSF, and then go to the F150, make sure it's also SSF, and so on down the list. So since it's for Mustang, we can actually skip and go straight to the F-150 and make sure these pins, make sure the wire colors matches, and it's going to the same item. Alright. So alright, so our first one is pin 4 should be, looks like dark blue and gray. So it's pin 4. It is blue and gray. Factory wise is SSF. We have SSF, so that one's the same. Now what we're also going to do is we're going to follow that down, since we're doing it on the transmission side. And it is pin 23 on the transmission. So we just simply write down pin 23 on the transmission. That's one of the wires we're going to go into. The next one is pin 34. Now pin 34 on F-150 is gray and orange. Instructions is still gray and orange. Pin 34. It is going to SSC. And again, it is also going to SSC. So far everything looks like it's going to be the same as the Mustang. It is going to pin number 16 on the transmission. So we made a notation also to go into pin number 16. Okay, and our next one, which should only be, I believe, 3 wires to cut on the transmission, is pin 49, and it is green and brown. 49, it is green and brown, and it is, looks like it's SSB. Yes, SSB. Instruction shows SSB. So all 3 wires seem to be identical. Last thing we're going to do is see what pin it goes on the transmission. Not only will it stay away from the exhaust, but it will be a cleaner install. Okay, on this one we are going to be pin 15 on the transmission. So now we know all the transmission wires are the same, so all the pinouts are the same. The only other thing we have on here is your 12-volt switch power, the ground signals, but we do have to tap into the brake switch. This will not work without the brake switch. So let's see if that matches as well. We are tapping into the white to number 1 on the brake switch, and the pink to number 4 on the brake switch. Once again, that's on the Mustang, so we're going to go to the Mustang and see what we got here. So we're going to highlight number 1. 1 is green and red. And that's what the instruction says. Green and red is going to just a hot at all times 20 amp fuse, or 10 amp fuse, number 20. We're going to roll that over to the F-150 and see if it's the same. There's the brake switch for the F-150. And I'm seeing a difference. So number 1, let me blow this up a little bit more. Number 1 on F-150 brake switch is brown and red. So although the colors are different, as long as it's going to the same part. Okay, so it is hot at all times, 10 amp fuse, number 14. The only difference is the color of the wires. So we can still use number 1. Take that one off. Go back to Mustang. And it was number 4. Number 4 is violet and white. That's what the instruction says. and it goes to the body control module. It says right here, BPP, brake pedal position. Let's see if it matches to the F-150. Number 4, it is also violet and white. It is going to the body control module. Same thing, BPP, brake pedal position. So it appears everything is the same from here, Mustang to the F-150, other than one of the wires is a different color. But all the pinouts appear to be the same. So now we know what we're doing. We are going to go ahead and jack the truck up, get up underneath there by the transmission, and pull these pinouts on the transmission side, not the PCM side, and tap into it. Okay, so here's the connector on the back of the transmission. You can get to it pretty easy and unplug it. So we have it unplugged. We already took off the heat wrap, so we can get to the wires. So now we're just going to look for these 3 pins and clip the wires, and that's our starting point. Okay, now that we located the connector on the transmission and located the wires, we are now going to use the connector here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the 3 wires on the transmission, and we're going to put a connector on one side and a connector on the other side, rather than just wiring it straight in. Therefore, if we decide we want to take this out of the picture, we just simply plug the 2 connectors back in, and it's back to stock. So let's get underneath the truck and get this connector on. Okay, so we already have the 3 pinned on the PCM side. We're just finishing up the connector. And now on the transmission side of it, we're going to strip these 3 wires and put the other side of the connector on. Okay. Alright, so what we want to do here is there's 3 ports to put them in, the cavities. So we want to make sure the terminal goes in the correct one, so if we plug it back into the other side of it, the wires match up. So the easiest way to do this is sometimes just partially plug the connector in and then match them up that way. That way there's no mistaking. Now that they're partially in, I can go ahead and pull it out and finish putting the connector together. In, and in. And then I have to put the lock in there. If I can pick the right tool up. So if we want to, as you can see, if we plug this back in the transmission, these wires are all connected just like they would be from the factory, so everything would still work normal. But at this point, we're going to go ahead and unplug it. And when we run 2 more connectors to these from the stager. Okay, at this point we have the transmission prepped and ready. So now we have to figure out where to mount this inside the vehicle so we can get these wires ringing. So let's take a look at it. Sometimes I think this is the longest point, just trying to figure out exactly where you want everything. What I'm going to do is, let's see here. So this is just a phone holder. I think we're just going to mount it in a phone holder for now. That way we can go ahead and run the wires right down there and get it all working. Find a better spot for it later if we don't like where it's at. Okay. Now that we know where we're mounting the stager at for now, we're going to prep the harness that comes with the stager. And what we're simply doing is we are separating the wires that are going to the transmission underneath the truck and the ones that are staying inside the truck. So let's go install the wire harness. So what we did is we went ahead and removed the driver's seat so we got a little easier access to it. Here's the main harness. We are running the wires to the transmission through the grommet here with the shifter cable. So there's a grommet right here underneath here for the shifter cable. So we're just going to run the wires through there, and of course the other wires we're keeping inside the cab. We are now back underneath the truck with the harness from the stager. We're just dropping it down on the driver's side. So it's a little bit easier to get to everything. We already pinned the PCM side. We are doing a transmission side. The last terminal to go on it. This is the transmission side. So we're going to put the connector partially in. We can go back to the instructions. It says, looks like we have tan going to blue. So here's my tan and blue's right here. So we're just going to partially install it. And then orange is going to, what does that look like? Gray and blue. There's our orange. We're going to connect it back to the gray and brown is what it actually is. And then our yellow is going to our green wire. Double check it. Yes, it's all good. Now we're just going to make sure they're all seated. Sometimes you really got to work these things. Okay, as you can see, they're all seated. Put the seal back in that just fell off. And put the lock plate back on. So what we're going to have is, these are the wires going to the transmission side. So we're just going to plug in. And these are the wires going to the PCM side. They will also just plug in. Now I'm just showing you like this so you can see it. Obviously we're not going to run it like this. We're going to go ahead and unplug everything, wrap the wires up, we'll run it on the passenger side. And then we're back inside the car. Okay, so it's all completed underneath the truck. And try to get a view of it. This is the finished product. It's plugged back into the transmission, and you see the two connectors that are going back to the stager in the cab. Okay, now that we have all the wiring done underneath the truck, we have it coming up through the console area. So this is where we have the stager at right now, until we find a permanent mount for it, or it may be the permanent home. When we go to the track, we just simply go ahead and take this thing out. And for now, we're just going to clamp it in there. So that'll work for now. Now we're going to move on to the power, the trans brake switch, the creep switch, and of course the brake pedal. So let's work on the brake pedal next. Here are the wires we have left. Red power, pink and white is going to go to the brake switch, and of course the violet and light blue is going to be the switches. So the brake switch. Let's see if I can get a picture of this or not. Okay, so there's our brake switch. We can just simply go up there and twist it, pull it out. And there are the wires going to it, which these were the ones that were different from the Mustang, so they're a different color. But we're still attaching to it 1 and 4. Alright, we're just going to unplug it. Brake switch is unplugged, move it out of the way. Here's the harness. I'm going to attempt to go up in there and try to give us a little bit more slack out of it so we can attach to them. Alright, so we are soldering in to the violet and white. Okay. Okay, we are now soldering the white wire to number 1, which is brown and red. There we go. Okay, so what we're doing here is, now that we already have the pink and white wire soldered to the brake switch, we cut it to put another connector in it. For the same reason, if we need to do any work on a truck, we can simply unplug it.
Here you go.
Right. Again, we're just going to slightly put that in place. It's just so we can make sure we pin it out correctly. Okay, it is. Alright, so this is our connector for our brake switch. We'll simply just plug it in here. It's connected. And of course, we'll plug the original one back into the brake switch itself. And we'll just reach up underneath there and put the brake switch back in place, and we are done wiring up the brake switch. Okay, so here's the short harness that goes from the back to the shifter. That way we have the shift up, shift down. And of course, this is the connector that comes back through the clock spring, so we have the paddle shifts if you upgrade it to a paddle shift. So we're going to go ahead and cut these wires out of it and use these for the trans brake and the bump. Okay, now that we have the wires cut, we already put the terminals on it, and we're putting our usual connector on it. And we can always be unplugged as we work. There it is. Okay, so we're putting our last terminal in the connector, locking it. This is from the stager, the power wire, which is going to be the signal return for the tap up and tap down, and of course the tap up, which is the light blue, which will now be trans brake. The violet is going to be tap down, which is now going to be staging, bump box, creep, whatever you want to call it. We're going to plug it into the connector, feed it down there. This is now going right here through the clock spring, and then it will go back to the paddle shifts, hopefully. Definitely don't want this bolt to come loose, so we're going to put a little bit of Loctite back on it. Give it a good snug to start with, and then we'll look at what the torque specs are. Alright, it's finally time to put the airbag back in. Blue to blue, and of course green to green. I don't know why I say green to green. It's yellow to yellow. Tabs are locked. Alright, it's back in. So as you can see, we have the tap down and the tap up. Hopefully the way we're wiring it up is going to be trans brake and bump box. Okay, we have all the wiring done. It is all installed, so the last thing we got to do is just put the driver's seat back in. The seat's pretty simple. We just have one connector and 4 13mm bolts. Headrest back on. And we're ready to connect the battery up. Alright, we're finally done installing the stager. We just got done hooking the battery up and putting wire loom on to make everything look a little bit better. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the laptop and set the 2-step up, and let's get inside the truck and see if it works. If you don't mind, Angela, you can open up the glove box and you can go see the first cord. There you go, up top. Yep, that's it. Thank you. Alright, so this is the watt box. That's what we're going to be using for the 2-step. And I'm just going to check it out real fast. Turn the AC off. Okay, so before we put the stager on this thing, we couldn't get this thing to go past 1700 without spinning the tires. But now we got a trans brake on there. We're going to, let's just start off with 2600. Let's see if we can push a stock converter up to 2600. I'm going to hit right. Alright, it is completed. Close it out. Let me move the laptop out of the way. Okay, so now what we got going on here is there is the switch that's going to power up the stager. If you notice, it also powers up the boost leash for our boost controller. And I hit my brakes, trans brake, you'll see the brake came on. And of course, the green light is me hitting the bump box. So, looks like it all works. Angela, if you don't mind, let's open up the garage door, take it outside, and give it a shot. that on your lap. Alright, so all that's taken care of. We're going to turn this on again. So right now we just have it about 3/4 on force and 3/4 on speed just to test this thing out. Let's put it in gear. We're going to go ahead and pull just the right one. See if it goes on trans brake, and we'll let off the brake. Alright, car's not moving, so trans brake's definitely working. Now we're going to go ahead and put it to the floor and see what RPMs we can get out of this thing. Alright, so trans brake worked. It actually went up on 2-step pretty easily. Bump box worked a little slow, but it felt like it had no power. So let's go ahead and see if we can't get more RPMs. That was 2,500 on the converter. Let's see if we can get some more out of it. Okay, that was 2,600. Went up on it really easy, so who knows? Let's go with let's try 3,100. I know that's a lot for a stock converter, but only one way to know. All right, it is in. Let's see if that works. There you go. Back in drive. Back on trans brake, and we're gonna put it to the floor. Worked great. Angel, if you want to, get a short video of it outside the car. Come back up a little bit more, you see. Alright, everything worked. It actually made boost. Trans brake worked. Creep works. Next is put some tires on, take it to the track.